My deep appreciation of theater history was instilled in me by Tom Empey, a college mentor to me and hundreds of others. While teaching Greek theater terms, he would grab the fabric of his slacks and say, "You see these pants? Euripides Eumenides," making light of content that could be considered rather dry and stuffy while still maintaining respect for the art, which is what I want to do with this podcast. For each episode, I invite a guest from the many paths my theater career has taken me down. I give my guest no idea what we'll be talking about, but they know we're going to find an outrageous story about theater history and perhaps get a better understanding about why we're still doing it after all these years. So welcome to Euripides Eumenides, and I am your host, Aaron Odom.
Apocalypse, apocalypse, I said, why you wanna show up now? Just when the heart my life was getting good. I'll give you one more chance. Walk on out of the door, yeah. Get your ass to getting where the getting is good.
Good morrow, Eumenidites. This is Aaron Odom from Trident Theater bringing you another episode of Euripides Eumenides, a theater history podcast. This episode is pretty special to me in that I've been excited to get this show in front of a live audience again for quite a while, as I've had the topic in mind to present in front of an audience for a few years now. Sometime this past year, I was invited to participate as an adjudicator and workshop presenter at the annual Wyoming High School State Thespian Festival. This year's event took place just this past weekend during the first week of December 2024 at the University of Wyoming in Laramie. And I've participated in this event for many, many years in many different capacities, and I've always appreciated seeing so many students from my home state participating in the art of theater. I saw so many students who have found a home in the theater giving their all, and it seems to be another answer to the question I pose in the intro of this show for every episode: why do we still keep doing this after all these years? Last week, I saw an absolute battalion of young and hungry theater artists answer that question in abundance. Can't wait to go back next year. Now, speaking of this episode, I was invited to present as a workshop presenter on how to create an arts podcast, and one of the sessions ended up being a recorded episode in front of a live audience. Plus, I was delighted to have two special guests on the episode, both of whom have been on the show several times before. I unfortunately amalgamate their names at the beginning of this episode, but high school theater instructors Dustin, Hebert, and Schneider added lots of fantastic commentary to the topic, as you'll soon see. But I'm most grateful to the audience of high school theater students and mentors who comprised the audience and made the experience just that more visceral. And speaking of visceral, let's get right down to it. Here's episode 102, Theater Hauntings. That's a fantastic way to start. Oh my God. I just got appropriately touched, I think. Hey, we are here live at the 2024 Wyoming Thespian Festival in Laramie, Wyoming. Hello, all you thespians. Yeah. This is fantastic. I'm so excited to do this show with you, and I have two guests that have been on the show several times, and they are co-coordinating this beast of a project. Everybody should be thanking these two. To my left, immediate left, is Mr. Dustin Schneider, theater instructor at Casper Kelly Walsh, and to his immediate left, Zach Schneider, who is a theater instructor at Natrona County High School.
Turns out we're brothers.
Dustin Hebert.
Did I say that? What did I say?
From Kelly Walsh.
Schneider.
Zach Schneider.
What the heck? You
Take
have now
two.
morphed. Dustin Hebert and Zach Schneider. Woo. Oh my
It's
word.
fine, Aaron. We've known each other for 25 years. It's not that big of a deal at this point.
I'm sorry.
I can be anything you want me to be.
And thank you for the check. That will come. It's not going to bounce.
It's on its way down.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great.
Just wait till like next Friday.
Yeah. Okay. So, in interest of time, we only have a little bit of time to do this in front of you all. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the topic today because this one, I've been wanting to do this for a live audience for a long time. Sitting at home and just talking about these things I think, is not as exciting as it would be in front of a live audience. So, gentlemen, I'm going to ask you this. There is a saying in theater: if your theater doesn't have a ghost, invent one. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts?
Yes.
Here's the thing. My theater is 100 years old this year. Ooh. Right? And so in a 100-year-old building, stuff goes wrong.
Really?
Right? And electricity and sound, Dustin says it better, but it's voodoo. You don't know how these things work and how over time they work. And so a lot of times it's nice to blame those things on a ghost. And
If you talk to any professional ghost hunter out there, what they will typically tell you is they use something called electromagnetic projection, or EMPs. And it will oftentimes pick up moments of trauma, moments of heightened emotion. And I could not think of a more accurate and remarkable place that both actors and audience members have experienced heightened emotion and trauma than the theatrical stage.
I love that. I love that.
They thrive on triggers, and it's something that exists in every theater around the world, so much so that we create superstitions about those sorts of things, such as the Scottish play, which I firmly believe is a very true thing, having it happen to me before. It is an absolute, you do not say those words.
Don't. Anyway.
we'll talk about it afterwards. Come find me outside the auditorium.
You need to be outside the Buchanan Center.
Okay, so I found a great cutting from a blog on this, on why theaters always seem to be haunted. And it's going to be a bigger one. It's got 3 parts to it, and I want to stop after each one and kind of discuss, if that's okay.
I do have to make a disclaimer. I named my daughter after our ghost.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm kind of a little invested in this. So I'm intrigued.
Okay.
Bring me in.
Aside from its bricks and mortar, any theater is a vortex of impermanence. It is a world where everything comes and goes, from actors who are in fashion one day and out of favor the next, to audience members who were born, live their lives, and die their deaths, all while the grand old theater building stands stock still. In this world of wisps of the wind, the theater ghost entails a rather rueful fantasy that some person might finally belong in the theater. It is thus that the theater ghost is often, quote, a house spirit who serves the theater, who watches over it, and who typically once worked there.
Yeah.
Gentlemen are sitting back very wistful.
No, it's you're going existential.
I mean, the idea that when you invest in a space, part of you stays with that space. I tell much of my students that 5 years from now, none of the things that you do here will matter, except the emotions that you leave with. And it's very interesting to watch. I think it's also interesting that a lot of these ghosts feel like they're targeted towards actors or actresses at that time. However, I will say that I've had much of my trauma experienced by the crew that work in my theater space far more than the actors do. It wouldn't surprise me if our ghost was a former stage manager.
Just a grizzled old, like, he's got a cigar hanging out of his mouth, just pushing a road case.
Bald on the top, ponytail in the back.
He doesn't want to talk to anybody. He just wants to move
He just
the case.
needs to move the case or press the go button. He's still waiting on the actor to make their entrance.
Just make sure I get a meatball sub by the end of the day.
Just make sure my sub's nice and cold, like I like my people. Like that for me, that's that ghost presence. Because the ghost does not always, for me at least, appear on stage. It's always up in the rafters. It's always behind the scenes. It's always something, it's always triggering some sort of scenic problem. A wheel breaking when you've got 2,000 pounds and it's already been spec'd and it's perfect, and then a wheel breaks.
Ka-snap. Yep.
And that's those sorts of things. That's a crew. That's a crew ghost.
For me, getting existential that way, I spent a lot of time in that room, right? And so the idea, it's comforting on some level that, 20, 50 years from now,
You're
go,
haunting that
60
space.
years from now, students in Natrona County High School are going to go, did you feel that? Yeah, it's just old man Schneider.
It's old man Schneider.
I won't get my name on the building, but I'll get to live there forever.
I saw him with his beanie cap.
It's Lady Hebert.
I'm going to go cry now.
Okay.
Lady
Okay.
Hebert.
So here's the second part of this cutting. Perhaps the theater ghost now shadows the theater because they were never performing temporarily in the limelight, but instead unendingly, every night, as a doorman or an usher. They were the one performer who could never come and go.
It's the bridesmaid. It's never the bride. The bride's moved on, but those bridesmaids stay late.
You walk through the door and you hear, "Tickets, please."
Yeah.
Why didn't you cast me?
I know it's going to be the tech director. Bryce is going to be there going, "Don't make Mr. Landman come out." Yeah.
Get in your light.
So Bryce and I forever in the auditorium.
Yep. Oh, now, here's the final part of this little cutting that I love. Note that this is not exactly a curse. In dwelling indefinitely in a palace of elite entertainment, the theater ghost is simultaneously on earth, in purgatory, and in heaven. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
It is. It's nice to at least let them move outside the theater space, unlike the directors that have to stay there. It gives actually us hope that if we die, we can go somewhere else for a change.
Well, it'll be a different show every night.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, in researching for this episode, I found a lot of ghost stories, some of which may sound somewhat familiar to anybody here, as I'm sure some of us have experienced things in the theater that we can't rationally explain. I would also suggest that, Dustin, like you were saying, on a spiritual level, a lot of feelings have been felt in a theater. And if we're going to be talking about the paranormal, we have to consider the metaphysical ramifications of a space being a locus of exercising human pathos and ethos.
Yeah, but I also think it's important to recognize that theater was designed as a religious festival.
Yes.
That's the
Boom.
root form of it. It's religious in nature. It is a celebration to Dionysus, Bacchus, whoever you want to call for it. But it really has a root form of prayer. And that's very much part of where the spirituality comes from. And when Andrew Lloyd Webber stole that from Phantom of the Opera, I think it's important to know that he theft that from the roots of theater. But I firmly believe that the theater space is sacred.
Yeah.
And there is something about this that makes it vulnerable for everybody.
Well, and going back to the man for whom this podcast was named, Tom Empey, who taught
All three of us.
all three of us. And I think that's important to point out because one thing that he would
Zach, I'm
say
right here.
is that, he had a very low voice, wore very flashy silk Western shirts. He would say, and he's quoting Sondheim here, in that there are two things that give immortality. Right? We're all going to die. The two things that we live on through are our children and our art. And theater,
Damn it.
hey, you got to go deep. I get to go deep.
I got
now,
a couple
too.
of those.
And so theater is also the art. I mean, paintings, I can go look at Van Gogh. I can look at Monet. I can look at a sculpture. Right? This building, the people who designed and built these buildings, they're going to stay here. But the shows that we do, the one act we just got done with, is done. And that experience is ephemeral like our life. What we have is we have those memories, we have those emotions and thoughts. And just like in our lives, we want those things to have meaning and live on. Right? And so, I can see that we want what we do to matter and to have meaning later on. And those teachers and the theater that we do gives forward.
See, and that's interesting, and you kind of hit on it earlier too, Dustin. Just to put it into perspective, you got to think about this. Why are so many haunted places churches or theaters? I guess you can put hotels in there too. It's just like so much happens in those three spaces. And,
Just places where, why?
It's because across the board, religion is a great factor of understanding and helping us cope with what happens after we pass. It is when our hearts are most open. It is when we are most vulnerable. And my heart has been most opened in the theatrical experience.
Or in hotels.
Yes.
Last night I was in the hotel. Why?
Why can't I go to sleep?
Why do I do
Why
that?
am I awake? This is ridiculous.
Why don't they have ESPN?
But that's, I mean, and it's never the place that you want. I mean, nobody wants to be in a group of people and be vulnerable and break down and experience something like that. But that's the great part is we don't get to pick.
Right.
We don't get to pick. We are there to feel that when I go to a theater experience, I have to feel it. I want it to hit me in the face. I want it to punch me in the gut. And I want to have to sit recollect myself, and then leave the room
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah.
And that is where part of my spirit is.
Yeah.
So I think for that, the more the religious experience for me is feeling
Yeah.
that safety and that vulnerability.
Now, in researching this episode, I read so many stories about mysterious occurrences in theaters. Okay, so stuff that sometimes we might be able to slough off and go, I don't know, it just the breaker tripped, or I don't know why that wire was there. I read stories about mysterious figures appearing in parts of theaters in which people aren't supposed to be. I read about a man walking across the stage when a raggedy man appeared next to him and mocked his walking before disappearing behind some masking flats. Like clear as day. This guy just showed up.
That's how Hebert directs.
I know. I know.
From the back.
Moo!
What are you doing?
That's how you come up and go, I would like you to project a little bit more. Okay. I watched a video of a team of ghost hunters trying to locate a ghost in a theater. One member of the team asked the ghost to take some of his personal energy to manifest or present itself. The man soon grew dizzy and claimed he may have even passed out. And at the exact same time, about 2 seats in front of him in the balcony where they were, the temperature dropped about 20 degrees in one single seat.
Yeah, I have that seat.
Oh, yeah.
It literally has Tom Empey, Euripides, Eumenides
Yes.
on that seat.
Yes.
It's where I sit, so I'm colder like everybody else. I have a body warming problem.
And Tom's there going,
Get
get out of my seat.
Absolutely.
Kicking you with his ostrich skin boots.
I think it's always I think it's interesting. I'm curious to see whether it happens more in the audience level or in the actual other portions of the theater performance spaces. Because for me, it's never just one ghost. The audience level could be moments of exacerbation, moments of vulnerability by audience members, whereas I'm not sure where Mr. Schneider sits when he watches his shows. I have a very difficult time watching my shows.
Okay.
Because it's hard for me to exist with my work being put in front of me. But mine would probably be where I direct the shows. That's where I feel the worst about my work at all times. That's where I look and I go, I hate everything I do.
Well, maybe this next story will help you out a little bit. I heard this story from a woman in Bangor, Maine, who went in early to a rehearsal to rehearse some music before a show, in which it was suggested that there was a child ghost that inhabited the theater in a white dress with long, flowing blonde hair. And here's a quote. I noticed my iPod lighting up. The volume dial was moving up and down, showing on the screen. However, the sound never changed. Then songs started changing, and I wasn't touching it at all. And without hesitating, she says, she called to a friend who was working in the box office, who explained that it was likely the child ghost, and he suggested she speak to it. Quote, I did, and asked her if she could make my iPod light up. It did. I asked her to turn it off. It turned off. I asked her to make the screen blink. It did. At this point, I was intrigued, but not scared. She was a happy ghost, just playing. End quote.
Okay, I started this off with electrical stuff, right? And I think I'm a pretty logical guy. Yes, I named my daughter after the ghost in the auditorium, but I don't know. After dealing with actors for as long as I have, I think it's and technology as long as I've had. I think it's a faulty iPad and an actress who wants attention.
Anybody agree with this? Yes, no? Yeah, okay. All right, we're going, okay. Yeah, we got half.
I'm going to throw
half yes.
cold water. You know, those ghost hunting shows, it's like, did you feel, wait.
I felt something. Shh.
It's colder here. Wait. I think over there.
It was at that moment I realized that I wasn't alone.
Give me a shaky cam and a soundtrack and some clever editing, and I can make anything spooky.
So
you gotta have more than that, man. My iPod blinked on and off.
You're such a cynic.
Get a new iPod.
You're such a cynic.
So
Come on.
Okay, then Zach, I'm going to challenge both of you. Do either of you have a ghost story from your theater?
Okay.
I do, but
Yes, and so here's the thing. I think the most important words for a person as they move through life are "I don't know." Okay, so I don't think there is, but I don't know. One night after a show had closed, everybody was gone. We'd had the cast party. The kids had left. I was working on something, and I hear a crash. Okay, this is the only experience I've had with it. And so I go out into the auditorium, all the lights had been off, and I go turn on the house lights, and I start walking around, and we have these globes on these chandeliers. They're long and oblong, and they're really thick old glass.
Yeah.
And so I walked back underneath the balcony, and one of these had dropped and shattered everywhere. Right?
Obviously a ghost.
Well, it could be a ghost. It could be the fact it's a 100-year-old globe hanging off a 100-year-old chandelier that was on for a long time, and then the metal contracted when it cooled and it dropped. I don't know.
mine's
But
better.
It sounds a lot.
I'm disappointed.
It sounds a lot cooler if I say Abigail. And sometimes when I walk out of our theater, the classroom, a light will stay on. And I'll thank Abigail for leaving the light on so I can leave the room. And so I will acknowledge that Abigail is there because I want to hedge my bets,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
We don't know.
It's very interesting because when you look at how these ghost hunters approach things, I completely understand. The further we move from the mechanical age into the digital environment, it's easier to screw with stuff. Light switches are no longer 120 volt electric light switches. They are controlled by Ethernet wires.
Yeah.
Lighting,
Those aren't the slides I had in my projection.
lighting is controlled by Ethernet wires.
There's-
Wireless frequencies. Can anyone explain to me the physics behind wireless frequencies?
Magic.
Say yes or no, 3, 2, 1. Yes. You're a nerd and you can't. Now, the important thing to remember is this. The more complex, the more digital something becomes, the more easier it is for it to screw up.
I think there's some dude in Russia going, let's mess with Hebert in theater, and we hacked into lights, let's do
You're
it.
a cynic, but I appreciate that. And just because Dimitri does do that, does not mean that I allow them to do that.
Show yourself. Oh no, he is onto us.
However, in one of the first theaters that I worked at, it was quite old, and it had so old it had an asbestos ceiling. So that gives you the idea of the age of the theater space. Asbestos is bad, okay? The important thing to note is that it had in the lighting area lights. But like lights to see your work, not lights to turn on. And so I walk into the theater space, and I see the lights are up there, and they're on. And I'm like, dang it. Somebody forgot. I said, dang it. I would never swear.
Oh, shoot.
And the lights were turned on. And I said, hello? And I saw a figure move up there. There is one way up and one way down. It is not fire compliant in any way. There is one way up and one way down. So I stood by the ladder and waited for the person to come down, thinking it was a child. I walked up there, climbed the ladder. I was thinner back then. I climbed the ladder. There was nobody there. I turned off the lights, walked down the ladder, and as I turned the corner, walked onto the stage, the lights were back on, and there was a silhouette. At that moment, I may have fecaled myself.
Oh, Dimitri.
I walked slowly backwards. I walked back to the ladder, looked up, the lights were off. So I get it, but also I went, okay, you're going to do this. I'm going to let you do this because my heart rate is not worth the price of a couple of light bulbs. I closed the door. I said, have a nice night. And I closed the door and I walked away. That's the closest I've gotten. And I'm pretty sure that's solid for me.
Look, the wife and I were going through some troubles that weekend. I didn't have a place to stay. I didn't think you'd be there.
Oh,
Have you seen those like YouTube videos of like dudes who live in people's like storage spaces in their houses? Like, yeah, they're
Squatters.
They're asleep and they'll like come down. They'll notice like the milk level was lower, and so they put a camera up, and there's like some lady who comes like 3 a.m. comes crawling out of the over the kitchen crawl space and down and into the kitchen.
It's like
and
that
then
scene from The Ring.
climbs up. Yeah.
Somebody ate my bucket of fish heads out of this. Now, okay, I've got a ghost story, and I think there's some students from Sheridan here. So at Sheridan High School, the theater was there for a long time, built with the high school in 1986. But the woman who designed it passed away in 2001. Her name was Sue Henry, and she loved her kids in theater, but she was a mean old ogre of a woman. And when she died in 2001, they named the theater after her. It's now the Sue Henry Theater for the Performing Arts. And I ran the after-school program there for a number of years, and I told the kids, like, listen, I don't know if this is legit or not, but I'm pretty sure Sue Henry haunts this place, and Henry loves you, but do not invoke the name of Henry, okay? Do not. And as soon as I
just
said
said
it,
it three times.
Whoa.
You
Yeah, what are you doing?
no, that
don't
was
do
respect.
this.
That was absolute respect.
But also, you need to clarify, what is invoking the name of Henry?
Don't deny her existence. Don't deny that she's there.
Oh, so don't be skeptical about it.
Don't be skeptical about it.
Okay.
I'm
and so
screwed. I'm sorry, Miss Henry.
So as soon as I said that, a bunch of the kids out there were like, "Ugh," and I'm not even kidding you. I'm standing on the stage. A light right next to me went out, and all the kids just like, and I went, see, your disbelief. Turns out faulty wiring in the entire building. It just got remodeled a couple years ago.
There was a custodian like 3 floors away that's like, what does this light switch do? And meanwhile, everyone is fecaling themselves at the bottom of a ladder.
I didn't know how to say the right thing.
No, I got you.
We're in front of a high school.
Everybody got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, kids, enough about us. Would you like to hear about some of the more famous theater hauntings around the world? Yeah. Woo! Yeah, okay. All right, now I really had to pare this list down because there are so many. So if I don't mention your favorite, I'm only given an hour, and I did the best I could to make an entertaining show for you. So we're going to move away from the metaphysical stuff and get into the absolutely spooky. And I've also saved you from some of the more grisly stories. You can go look those up on your own, and those ones don't really have any happy origins. I kind of wanted to keep this light. Okay, let's go to Beijing, to the Huiguan Opera House, originally constructed in 1807. Not its own standalone building, the Huiguan Opera House. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that right.
I have no doubt about that. I've never heard anything like that.
It stands in the middle of a complex of structures, and the site is now not just a theater, but also a museum. During World War II, some developer had an altruistic streak and offered to build some low-income housing near the theater. But in order to do so, he built over an ancient burial ground in the process.
Always a good idea.
That's actually where I designed most of my houses.
The land is cheap.
I was like, has somebody been buried here? I'm out.
Well, and if it's a natural burial, the nutrients in the soil, my
really
zucchini has never done better.
The farming. The cornrows.
To this day, screams and cries can be heard in the courtyard of the theater.
I've never been more sure of anything in my entire life.
It's said that if someone were to throw a stone in the courtyard, loud voices will shriek and demand the thrower to cease their activity.
Yeah, because they just got hit by a rock. You know, it's some gardener who's like, hey, I'm trimming the hedge here.
Man.
Man.
A toss of a rock. And, ah! I wonder what happened.
His buddy is selling rocks for like
I dare you
$5
to
a
not
throw.
hit Jason.
Here's what's super cool is if you think about the last 6,000 years of human history, I think it's easier to find a burial ground than it is to not find a burial ground.
Well,
Yeah.
isn't that
Like-
isn't that the story behind the movie Poltergeist?
Is it?
It's
Yeah.
it's on the pool. right? They all come up out of the pool.
Yeah.
That's a PG movie.
Okay, it's a PG movie, and it's all about building a housing development on an ancient burial ground site. But in that pool, they had skeletons coming out.
Yeah.
Turns out they were real.
Yep, because you could
The
get
bones.
You
Yeah,
could
the bones.
get you could get the skeleton. The skeletons were real. Everything they put on them was all movie magic.
Yeah.
but you could get the skeletons cheaper from a scientific lab than they could get the prop skeletons made. So just mind your teachers if they need skeletons for a haunted house or anything. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
cheaper to use yours.
You have some discount bones for sale? bones for sale?
I got a bone guy.
Femurs only.
I work out of the trunk of my car. Okay.
I travel every night. Fly by night bone sale.
Coming back to the States, the Dock Street Theater in Charleston, South Carolina. Anybody heard of this? No? Okay. Originally opened in 1736, the Dock Street Theater is still in operation today, but not without some significant strife along the way. The theater burned to the ground in 1740, always a good sign for theater ghosts.
Well, it was
Yeah.
lit by candlelight.
Well, I mean, it was not uncommon. I mean, people fart in the wrong direction in a theater, and it's a fire. But the Dock Street Theater was rebuilt as a hotel in 1809, and after the Civil War, the space fell into fairly condemnable status and was set to be torn down until investors and developers sought fit to reimagine the space as a theater in 1935. And it has been there ever since with some quasi-permanent tenants. Quote, the most flamboyant ghost here is Nettie Dickerson, and I'm editing for my audience, a woman of the night, who...
It was by the docks, right?
Yeah.
That's
Who,
just
legend has it, was struck by lightning while standing on the balcony of the hotel. Her shade has been reported gliding along the second floor of the theater, crazy-eyed and dressed in a red gown.
Hey, let her cook, man.
Quite literally.
I'm envisioning, this is an audio medium, but I'm wearing a Vader jersey. I'm envisioning the R2-D2 electrocution scream. Just, you're having a nice romantic night with your lady and you hear a knock, you open the door and just see this. Yeah,
Okay,
there
so
you go, thank you.
look-
Can't quite get the
By
voice.
the docks. All right, so nothing good happens after midnight and by the docks. Okay, it is
In South Carolina?
It is a. Yeah, nothing good happened there. My question to you would be this, which you have not read on. Are there ghosts from different time periods? So would you get the 1800s ghost mixed with a dash of the 17th century ghost, maybe with like South Carolina, right? So early 1900s ghost.
Sure.
Do they talk?
I just keep
Do they
I keep
chat?
imagining what are like 2024 ghosts going to be, right? It's at our high school.
Bruh,
It's going to be
what are you
like
doing, bruh?
the ghost of some teenager just like swiping up endlessly.
Oh no!
That
This is what
is
it's going to
so
be.
cringe. No
This is what it's going to be.
cap.
Riz.
In the last 24 hours. Riz. In the last 24 hours,
Skibbity.
I have had.
Nobody's going to be afraid of him. It's just there's a kid with a broccoli cut yelling "skibbity" over and over. I don't know what it is. Just ignore him. You'll be fine.
His name's Skylar. No, I don't know how to spell it.
Is that a whiff of Axe body spray?
It smells like strawberry champagne vape.
Yeah.
I think also it's going to be one of those things, having physically run into students at this point, at this festival, physically as they're staring at their phone, and I don't change my pathway. Being a 6'4" large man, I allow them to hit me like a wall and go, pick your head up. And I think that's what that's going to be, is they're going to walk through you.
The ghost.
And you feel all of a sudden like, why do I Why do I have a sudden urge to cry?
Or I better check my Snapchat.
I know.
All of a sudden, I feel demure and mindful.
I know. I'm here mindful. Why am I holding space? This is weird.
Maybe it'll be a good thing.
Maybe.
South Carolina. Let's
South
do
Carolina.
this screeching ghost.
Yeah. Now, another ghost often seen at the Dock Street Theater is a former employee of the hotel, Junius Brutus Booth, father of the famous actors Edwin Booth and Zach.
John Wilkes Booth.
Yes. If you haven't listened, Zach was on an episode of mine in which we talked about Laura Keene, one of the first successful female producers in this country, who was completely overshadowed by the fact that she was in Ford's Theater the night that Lincoln was shot, cradled his head after he was the act had happened, and knew John Wilkes quite personally. So
She wrote the play. It was My American Cousin.
Yeah.
And could you imagine, like, the president is coming to see your play? Yeah, you go home. So, how did the president like it? Oh, we killed him. Oh, too soon?
I've got to go.
1865.
I'll see myself out.
Hey, gang, how about we go to some of the larger markets in the world, huh?
Yay.
Okay. So let's go to New York. Okay.
Start spreading the news.
Anybody been to the Palace Theater in New York? Just off Times Square on 47th Street, right in the heart of Midtown Manhattan, sits the Palace Theater. Originally constructed in 1913, the Palace was known primarily as a vaudeville house for years, seeing a variety of acts over the years, including Ethel Barrymore and the Marx Brothers. Yay. Okay? But other big performers played there as well later on, such as Bing Crosby, Mae West, Fred Astaire, and Bob Hope. It used to be said that a performer has made it by the time they, quote, played the Palace.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, very similar to
When you
playing
die
Carnegie
at the
Hall.
palace, you really die at the palace.
Oh.
That's a joke none of you get.
During the Great Depression, they didn't no laugh. During the Great Depression, the demand for vaudeville waned somewhat, and the Palace was refurbished to allow for motion pictures to be shown, as well as stage performances as well. So throughout the years, it saw performers like Danny Kaye, Frank Sinatra, and the Palace saw the final performances by Judy Garland in 1967.
So you all need to do yourself a favor. You have YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Get off of TikTok. You need to listen back through this, take down those names, and go look at those things, because everything you're doing right now, we talked
It was
about
inspired
living on.
at some point.
You need to go geek out on old, like, 30s, 40s, 50s comedy and movies and shtick.
If none of you have seen Abbott and Costello, who's on first, shame on you. Everybody's
Don't
like,
shame the kids.
who's
They're gonna
that?
take that
No,
home.
No, I mean, not shame on you, but go look at it.
The thing is we grew up in a time where we had maybe 3 channels, and it was all reruns of what our parents and grandparents watched.
If
right?
the aluminum foil was fresh.
Now you guys, yeah, move the antenna.
You can smack the side of the TV as much as you want.
But now you guys have access. There's so much like claiming your attention, but this stuff is gold. And it'll feel original to your generation when you do it, when you're just copying what they did.
Have you guys heard of this Frank Sinatra?
Yeah.
The cool part is that these guys were acting and doing these stupid sketch bits, but they were so honest about it.
Right.
That's what made it work, is that level of honesty where the guy's getting frustrated. He's like, what are you talking about? Who's on first? Right. Who? The guy on first. The guy first base. Right. Like the third base. That's
And
the
that,
joke.
I don't know.
That repetition of night after night after night in front of an audience, and just like they did Who's on First for 50 years.
50 years?
I mean, the original in vaudeville, then on radio, then on TV, then it was in it was in movies.
Skibbity's already cringe. You've just dated yourself by 6 months. That's already, that language has already moved past.
That's why I get the laugh. Out of touch old guy.
That was so dumb.
Oh,
we need matching
Ohio.
T-shirts for that. Ohio.
See? Low-hanging fruit.
They said a thing I know.
They're using cultural references.
In a lame way.
Okay, so back to the Palace. Perhaps because of the variety of acts and audiences the Palace attracted, it is perhaps even better known for its paranormal activities. Quote, and who, this is just like a list of what they have. A white gown cellist who plays in the pit and who last appeared to Andrea McArdle when she was doing Beauty and the Beast there. There's a sad little girl who looks down from the balcony. A man in a brown suit who walks quickly past open doors late at night. A Boy Who Rolls Trucks on the Landing Behind the Mezzanine, and several others.
That's weird.
Yeah, I mean, any one of those is innocuous in itself, but if you saw a little kid in like 1880s coveralls just staring at you rolling a truck.
I'd actually be good with that.
How about the sad little girl just looking down at you from
I wouldn't be good with that.
No.
It confirms the theory that it's the roadies, right? I just need to move this truck. Please move.
I think it's interesting that they're children because there were not a lot of. I just bumped everything.
That's okay.
There were not a lot of fire codes back then, and it wouldn't surprise me that that place had burned down and been rebuilt many times over and over again.
And no child labor laws, right?
Oh yeah, no,
So,
those kids were the roadies.
They were, yeah. Because I mean,
They were the child labor.
even in our remodeled catwalks in our 100-year-old auditorium, I have to wear a hat or I bang this head every time. I mean, when you have a 3.5 foot clearance, and you
Children work best.
Yep. Hey. Thunk. All right, you're up. You know, they're
Send in the
expendable.
next one. Too tall. Send in a younger one.
Yep.
Now, Deidre, you need to be able to lift at least 50 pounds. When do I get my apple slices?
Afterward,
You get one per day. That's your nourishment.
you get an apple at Christmas.
Now, there is also apparently the ghost of a high wire artist during vaudeville times that fell to his death on stage in front of an live audience.
How many Spider-Men are they going to be
Oh my God.
after that musical? It's just like an army of spider ghosts.
So,
Well,
for
evidently
those of you that don't know, at least 5 people died in the production process of Turn Off the Dark.
Well, they didn't die.
They didn't die.
One guy
Not one guy died.
like fractured a
One guy
vertebrae
died.
diving into the pit
did the
because
episode
there
on
was a bad tech and the techie didn't get the cue as Spider-Man was diving after Mary Jane. He fell down like a story and a half onto the orchestra. Another one.
It's
they had
okay,
the
his neck broke
tension-
the fall.
Yeah, they didn't have the tension right, and Spider-Man was supposed to fly across stage, and it snapped the guy's wrists. There was just a lot. They got the performers stuck over to the audience.
One of them, I mean, you ran into the wall too. He
Yeah.
was swinging around and ran into like the tip of the mezzanine.
Yeah.
Just nailed it.
Well, apparently this high wire ghost does his act on a regular basis that last time over and over again.
Is he?
You just get to see him with the stick up there on the wire and then fall all the way down.
My question is he equity?
No, they didn't have unions. No
okay.
unions in the vaudeville era.
So that's perfect for them because it's you don't have to worry about safety.
That's free
You
entertainment.
don't have to pay the guy.
You don't give him a coffee break.
Yeah.
We're good. All right.
Did they tell him to break a leg?
Ooh.
He broke all his legs.
It's vaudeville. That was a phrase that was used. I bet that was
Uh-huh.
where that comes from.
Oh, now here's the last one. Judy Garland apparently also haunts the theater.
Who's that?
And is said to hang out near a door at the rear of the orchestra that was built especially for her and her final shows.
Who's seen my cigarettes?
Get out of the way!
Judy Garland.
Judy Garland had a substance abuse problem.
Little
I
bit.
don't laugh at addiction, but
No.
I laugh at Judy Garland.
But if you could hear a very inebriated Judy Garland, echoing through the house, and you're just like, it's just Judy.
yeah.
It's just, this is
That's
what
the name
happens.
actually of my one-man drag show.
just Judy.
Just Judy.
Not Judge Judy?
Well, I do judge
Just
Judy.
Judge Judy.
I do judge Judy. I do Judy Garland.
Judy Dench?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's only on Sundays, though. It's
Just
just
Judy.
getting in that space. It's really dark.
Judy Tenuta?
What?
Judy Tenuta?
Yeah,
Get
but
to,
I've
the
got to get
accordion?
the accordion,
Yeah.
and it's in the shop.
Okay, let's go to another theater. The New Amsterdam Theater. I won't go into this one too much, as I've already covered it on episode 22,
It's the
Theater
Disney
Superstitions.
Theater.
Yeah.
It's the Disney Theater.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yep. But Olive Thomas was a film and theater star in the early 20th century. She was a dancer in the Ziegfeld Follies, among other things, and died a really unfortunate death. I'll just tell you to go find out what happened to her in episode 22, but I will tell you this. She died by accidental poisoning. She's seen quite frequently in the New Amsterdam holding a glass bottle, similar to the one that may have carried the poison that eventually killed her. Olive is probably the most prolific ghost on Broadway to the point that it actually affects day-to-day operations in the New Amsterdam.
Yeah, I saw The Lion King, and I thought it was the weirdest directorial choice in The Circle of Life. The mountain comes up, and there's just this lady holding a glass jar. Right? I don't know.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I was moved.
We're supposed to be holding Simba, but there's a woman in 1840s.
You poisoned me! It's like, Disney, you're going dark on Broadway.
But no, in the New Amsterdam, this is where Aladdin is still playing,
Yeah.
and this is something that happens every day. Quote, Olive is by far the most active ghost on Broadway, manifesting so frequently that Dana Amendola, vice president of operations for the Disney Theatrical Group, has placed photographs of her at every entrance to the theater so workers can greet her when they arrive for work each day, which is believed to keep her mischief at a minimum.
They've created a process for greeting her.
Yeah, and saying goodbye when you leave. And I have a friend who is in Aladdin. He's been in it since it opened, and he said he's had many Olive interactions and says hi and bye to her every day as he leaves.
It is Disney.
I feel like, hold on, this is great. We're going to predict the next Disney musical, which is going to be The Haunted Mansion.
Oh,
There you go.
Musical.
And see, again,
Yeah, they
you
just-
get all the ghosts. You don't have to pay them.
You don't have to pay them.
They work for-
Non-equity.
They work for less than scale.
yeah. I mean, that is going to be weird, though, that day when there's a line of them at the door of the HR office and going like, hey, we got back pay coming.
Look,
We have unionized.
the residuals aren't what they used to be. Streaming has killed us. Yeah, it's a business joke.
Okay, the Belasco
They
Theater.
didn't laugh at your joke either.
The Belasco Theater, conceived and built by Broadway mastermind David Belasco, the building was erected in 1907 and still stands in its original place on West 44th Street, just off of Times Square. Throughout his life, Belasco was known for a couple things. One, he was known as the, quote, Bishop of Broadway due to his personal style choice of wearing a cassock and collar, much like a priest would. So it's that long frock coat
Yeah.
with the high collar, buttoned right down the middle.
It's all about airflow. I'd say you don't knock it.
No,
Is that all he's wearing?
because
That's
that
rough.
button's just at the navel.
That's really, that just covers the top.
Porky pig in it.
It's just.
I Winnie the Pooh.
It's all, folks.
But his second one is once his theater was built, he would spend so much of his time there, he actually had an apartment created on the top floor. And while there, he was writing, producing, directing. He just had so much to do in the theater with his life that now he seems to be keeping up with tradition after death. And his seems to be the least ghostly of all of them. He appears much as he did in life, as though I'm looking at a man right now in the theater seats in his cassock and collar, and often will actually shout notes to the actors on stage.
Number 3, you're off. Half a count.
Louder.
Yeah, I think that happens in our auditorium. John F. Welsh was there, and he just sits back there, and you just hear him going, okay, do it again.
But, honestly, like actors are such a sensitive crowd that they go, God, even the ghosts hate me.
I can't even get the ghost to like me.
The worst is when the ghosts fall asleep. Oh. Right? It's like, I'm not even going to glower at him anymore. It's too boring. Just,
Is the ghost snoring?
yeah.
Oh, my God. Now, some women have reported a man appearing in the wings to pinch them on the backside before going on stage. They're told that's just David, and they can't control him now any better than they could when he was alive.
David needs to take some consent training.
I think so.
Yeah.
David needs to.
David, we just don't do this anymore.
If you're going to work here, you need to take the compliance test online. I don't care if you forgot your password.
We're not resetting it again.
It's password, David, isn't it?
David, your password is password.
And that's when you get pinched on the
Ooh, with all zeros.
Why?
Why?
Okay, now let's go to what is known as the most haunted city in the world. Anybody have any guesses?
New Orleans.
London. Can you imagine?
Why, did people die there?
Is there emotional strife nearby? There are two that I'm going to talk about. The first one is the Adelphi Theater. Now, I've already covered this pretty well in episode 13 on William Terrace. I'd highly recommend that you go back and listen to that. It has to do with the grisly murder. Anybody here interested in murder podcasts? Yeah, everybody? Yeah, a show of applause. We're on an audio format? Okay, thank you.
Murder!
Yay for murder! But yeah, some guy thought he got stiffed out of a role, and so he killed the guy who he thought took it. And now that guy just kind of haunts the theater, wanders around, wanders through a wall, and ends up in a spot where he eventually was killed. They moved that stage door to around the other side of the building. But yeah, William Terrace just kind of hangs out there. He also hangs out in a tube station in London. Just kind of shows up. People are like, hey, you can't be here. And then he disappears.
No. Those tube stations used to be sewer runs.
Yeah.
They used to be sewer runs. So he's just mucking it up.
Yeah. So
Just looking for his...
the big one that we got to do in
Drop my ring down the toilet. It's here somewhere.
the big one we got to talk about, and we're going to talk about London, is Drury Lane. And yes, go ahead, make the joke.
Do you know the Muffin Man?
Yeah, okay, thank you. It has been in various forms in London since like 1663. You know, sometimes burning down, then being rebuilt, but it's been there as an institution. Drury Lane is host to a number of ghosts, and I'll talk about a couple of the more famous ones. The Gray Man. Anybody know the Gray Man? Okay, I got one. Yep, okay.
Know your ghosts, people.
This should be talked about in schools. Don't they teach cursive anymore? The Gray Man usually only shows up in the daytime, and he only seems to show up when a show and rehearsal is going to be a success. Anything that seems to have bombed at Drury Lane, guess what?
No gray man.
No Gray Man.
What's to stop me from going, hey guys, I saw the Gray Man.
It's going to be
He's
great.
out there, right?
Yeah.
Does it take a consensus to establish this? Does the marketing team know about this process?
I bet so.
Gray Man approved?
Gray Man. It's on the posters.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Gray Man showed up. He's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Susical. Gray man approved.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was, but it was some big musical that, you know, it's one of those ones that should do just fine, and it bombed. It tanked at Drury Lane. No Gray Man.
I'd like to see some empirical data.
Such a skeptic.
I am.
The one time Oklahoma bombs, you have to blame it on the you have to blame it on the bomb. It's the gray man. Clearly.
We're going to be talking about Oklahoma here in a minute.
KLA.
But the Gray Man often appears in standard 18th century clothing. Quote, wearing riding boots, a powdered wig, and a tricorn hat.
Yes, I'm the gray man.
Again.
Dude, the gray man was a dandy.
I do declare this show shall be successful.
Again, the wife and I are going through some troubles. I didn't have any clean laundry. I like the tricorn
My gray
hat.
is a choice.
So the Gray Man, when he's seen, he walks from one side of the dress circle to the other and just disappears into the wall. Now, no one seems to be able to place his specific identity, but after years of sightings, it was discovered that the wall he walks into actually was a false wall. So they took it down, and they discovered a skeleton of a man behind the wall with a dagger between his wrists.
That's dope.
Yep. Yep.
That's awesome.
So now he's there. Nobody knows who he is.
No
Nobody
bones
knows.
about that?
I don't understand. Joseph Grimaldi.
I made a
Does anybody
joke.
know about Joseph Grimaldi? Known pretty much as the first clown in the iteration we can think of, Grimaldi adorned his face with white base makeup and red shapes painted to accentuate his expressions. But more frequently, he's known for creating the concept of audience interaction and his feats of physicality as a clown. Having first been on stage at the age of 3 and working until he was 55, it was Grimaldi's devotion to physical comedy that eventually killed him.
Clowning doesn't pay.
Yeah.
No.
No, I mean,
Clown
like,
around and find out.
like he he would do like flips and then, like land on his front, like back flips and smash on the ground. I mean,
What year is this?
Grimaldi. I want to say mid-19th century, somewhere in there.
Okay, so
Clowns looked really weird back then, too.
Yeah.
Like, they were not cuddly clowns. They
Like
were
the ones we have today that don't give anybody any kind of hesitation.
Right. No. These just flipped around.
Yeah. So eventually all that comedy just kind of wore his body down, and eventually he just kind of was like, it can't. So he gave up the ghost.
Buster Keaton.
Yes. Yeah. Without all the planning that Buster did. No. But in life, Grimaldi was also a cheerleader of his fellow performers, often bolstering them on with pats on the back or the backside, which he would more often do to his female counterparts. In death, it seems much the same. While Grimaldi doesn't always manifest himself visually, actors have often reported pinches on the backside or hearty slaps on the back from out of nowhere as they enter the stage.
It wasn't me, Dustin. It was the clown. Did you feel that?
I felt so encouraged. Thanks. Here's one account of a run of Oklahoma at Drury Lane. Quote, a young American comedienne was alone on the stage and having great difficulty in delivering her punchlines. The audience's tepid reaction seriously undermined her confidence and caused her delivery to become increasingly ineffectual. No matter how hard she tried, she failed to engender the anticipated response. Then, during one performance of the show, she suddenly felt firm hands place themselves upon her shoulders on stage and begin propelling her to a different part of the stage.
That's going to be me. I'm going to die like that.
Move.
I told you, downstage left! Then the hands gently repositioned the actress's arms and readjusted the angle of her head. In that instant, as she delivered her lines, the audience responded with rapturous laughter.
He had had enough. And that is just, she evoked the clown by her the ghost by her bad acting.
Yeah, she's
and he's like, I am done with this. I will do it for you. I will do this for you.
That when I was thinking about having to sit in an auditorium and watch show after show, it's like, how many bad versions of Memory or Defying Gravity are you going to sit through, right? Before you have to get up and just go, look, just move downstairs, move your arm here, trust me. There you go.
But this is my interpretation. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I've seen them all. Well, and hey, kids, for better for worse, that's my story on theater hauntings, which does, again, beg the question, why is it that theaters seem to be haunted so often?
It's not a question. We answered it at the beginning. Were you here?
Thanks for talking for the next 50 minutes about
you
stuff.
You missed it. Every single instance has a tie directly to some sort of trauma, some sort of emotional outburst. We've already identified that child labor is a useful tool and creates long-lasting impressions upon the space.
And they're disposable.
Oh.
I'm kidding. You're all beautiful, precious snowflakes.
And how many of you are under 18 and willing to work?
For nothing.
But no, I do just appreciate that level of make-believe that we will endure to say, no, I don't understand why the spotlight turned off tonight. It could have just been a hot light, or it could have been.
I want the lights to go out on us right now. I want them to just, I want the whole place to go black right now. It didn't.
Nope.
The theater's too new.
Oh, yeah.
It needs.
There have been no high wire acts on this stage yet.
No, give it 8 years when all the warranties run out on all the manufacturer, and then
the curtains, fire retardant
absolutely.
expires. Yep. Well, gang, thank you for attending today. I hope you enjoyed this. You can scan the QR codes outside and get the access to the entire library of Euripides Eumenides wherever you listen. But thank you again, and hope you listen to the future. Looking back on this episode, I hope that I've not scared anyone away from any theater simply by thinking that ghosts are in every theater, even though they may be, due to the sensitive nature of the art form. I guess, if anything, chances are that you'll run into a ghost who mainly wants to see the art of theater respected, and that what's put on stage is of the highest quality. I also want to thank Dustin, Hebert, and Zach Schneider for their contributions to this episode, but mainly the Wyoming High School Thespian Festival for allowing me to record in front of an audience there. I hope we can do it again next year. But for now, I'll sign off. This has been another episode of Euripides Eumenides, a theater history podcast. I have been your host, Aaron Odom. Another episode will be in your ears in a fortnight, and I will see you at intermission.
Ooh.